A huge part of the group here tonight is the Inland Empire, Redlands Patriots, and especially Mr. and Mrs. Hauser, who are out there leading this charge. We have Dr. Dale Broom and his wife who have done so much work to support this and have supported it generously. John Barry, where are you, Chief? Yeah, John Barry, it's good to see you again. Has done so much work, and I see all these other people. We have Tim Donnelly. Tim, where are you, sir? He is now running for Congress here. We have so many people from so many places, and one of the reasons that I'm going around the room is not to do the typical political credit giving, but to point out to you how widespread, how diverse, and how long-standing this group is. I see Colonel Needs over there, Sandra Needs and all that. What's your last name, Colonel? Ramirez, yeah. They go by two different names. I get them confused. We have so many good people in this room. Sherry Gilliam and her husband and her family are here. Keith is going to be on our panel. The people in this room come from every part of Southern California, every walk of life, every religion, probably every other kind of orientation that we don't care about, right? It doesn't make any difference. This is America here. We're gathered here together to pursue our liberties. This is hugely important, and what is here in this room represents over 10 years of continuous political equity. That's what I like to call it, because despite the decline of our state, despite the fact that we have slid into one-party government in California, the cause of freedom has not dimmed one single bit among the people who are here in this room. And I would remind people that in this state, there are probably 7 or 8 million people who agree with us on political principles, and the parents of 6 million children who, regardless of their party, regardless of their political persuasion, agree with us that we must change what has happened in California. And we've witnessed here the decline of our culture. We've witnessed the decline of our country. And I submit to you that we can trace it all back 100 years ago when we turned our children over to the government. And although it seemed benign at the time, we have now seen what they will do with it. And now the dark forces of evil have taken over our schools. They seek to undermine our country. They undermine the families. They undermine the parents. They undermine our culture. They are the root cause of almost everything that is wrong with America. And I submit to you that we cannot even think about taking back our country unless we first take back our children, their hearts, their minds, and their souls. There is no substitute for doing that. And that is not going to be the last thing that we do, or the ultimate thing we do, or the most important thing that we do in recovering our country. It is the only thing that we should be doing in the next 3 years. We have so many people who are out there waiting for us, and when we encounter parents, many of them who don't speak English, many of them who aren't American, who want to be part of our society, but are not permitted to become part of our society. They're not permitted to learn the language. They're not permitted to acquire the skills that they will need to become part of our country, to become part of our culture. Yes, to become American fully. I submit to you that most of these illegal immigrants here, legal and illegal alike, have a desire to become part of America, but we have put in place an institution which is an extension of a political movement that has members of both parties in it. The one state, the one movement, the large Leviathan state seeks to keep us and the newly arrived Americans separate, balkanized into different areas, categorized by race, categorized by sexual orientation, or whatever they imagine today. We have to reverse that and move away from multiculturalism back to a pluribus unum. One country. We must restore our Judeo-Christian ethic to its primacy of place, but most of all, no matter what is taught to the children, it is the parents and not the government. It is the parents who must determine what their children are taught about values, about life, and about America. You'll be hearing much more in the future, but we wanted to bring you tonight some distinguished speakers, and chief among them is Rebecca Friedrichs, who has been in the teacher wars here and the educational wars, the school wars, whatever you want to call them, forever. She is the author of a well-known book called Standing Up to Goliath. You'll see I have the business card here, but the volume is back there, which can be signed by the author, who is over here. Rebecca Friedrichs, would you come up, please? There. Watch your step there. Rebecca Friedrichs, everyone. Thank you. Oh, by the way, as we were talking ahead of time, we talked about where we're going to do the big kickoff. I said we're going to do it in Huntington Park, California, where I was born and grew up, only to find out that she, too, was born in Huntington Park. So we have a connection we didn't know about.
Same hospital.
Same hospital, Mission Hospital.
Same year.
Oh, no.
Our mothers were in the same room.
1962?
Hey, you just made me older than I really am. Thanks a lot. We were friends until then. Hey, everybody. First of all I can say, Mike, is preach it, brother. Everything he was just saying, I concur 100%. And yeah, give him a clap. He was great. My favorite quote, if you've heard me speak before, you've heard me say it before, my favorite quote spoken by Henry David Thoreau, who was an amazing writer. We used to study him in our schools before the unions came in and took out all of our great education. And that quote is, "There are thousands hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root." And I'm always telling people, look, we can fight all day at all these branch issues, all the problems we have in our state and country. We can fight about the gas tax, we can fight about the sex ed, we can fight about whatever, or we can dig out the root. And the root is the corruption of these unions and these corrupt politicians and their friends who have infiltrated our schools and all of our government agencies. So whenever President Trump says the deep state or whatever he calls it, I always think of the unions and their friends. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to outsmart the unions and their deceitful messaging. Because let's face it, we've been fighting for school choice in this state for a long time, whether it was vouchers or whatever way we fought, and we keep losing. And we keep losing by the same margin. Have you noticed that? Exact same margin. So we need to flip that margin in our favor. So today I'm going to talk to you about some ideas I have on how we can do that. And I was telling Mike, we all need to get together with a few key minds from all the angles, and we need to plan we need to create a war room and create our war, our map, and how we're going to fight these people. So here's some ideas for you today. Number one, we need to understand the enemy and not be afraid to expose that enemy. So the enemy in our schools is the unions. Couple of things. Even the messaging on what they call themselves. They claim they are teachers' unions. They are neither teacher, they are neither union. Union's positive, right? They were the good guys in the Civil War. So they use that good name and confuse people. They use the name of teacher and confuse people. No, they're a political action committee for a radical leftist socialist communist agenda. Period. Period. We cannot be afraid to call them that. So what we have to do is realize that the quote, teachers union is not teachers. It's unions masquerading as teachers, using my profession to push their agenda. We also need to remember that the unions have planted activist, quote, teachers in every school in America. So there are some bad teachers, and the unions defend the bad ones. You know that. The good ones keep leaving. We have to stop that. We have to get the bad ones out and keep the good ones in. So those bad ones are there to squash and manipulate the great ones. So what do the unions do? This is the main thing I want you to remember about unions. They divide and conquer. They've divided parents and teachers, teachers and kids, administrators, and everyone's divided, right? Don't let them do it anymore. Expose them, bring us back together. Second thing, the unions use specific messaging to teachers that has been deceiving teachers for decades. Have you noticed that teachers are not on board with the school choice fight? Have you noticed that? In bulk. Some teachers, the ones who see the truth, they're behind us. A lot of them fight against us. I want to tell you a story. One of the best teachers I know, I won't tell you her name, outstanding teacher. She was a GATE student as a kid. She went to college on a scholarship. She's a strong Christian. She has 3 little children. She wants school choice for her kids. Here's what she told me one day. Rebecca, why are you fighting for charter schools? They're bad. They're not good for the kids. And she starts listing all the evils of charter schools. Every single one was a union talking point. She didn't know she was being deceived. So most teachers only hear one side of the story. The unions make sure that we have constant chaos in our schools, bad discipline, Common Core, you name it, okay? So teachers are exhausted and they're hunkered down and they only hear one message, the union message. Here's the union message. I'm just going to give you some highlights. This is why teachers aren't with us and why we need to educate them and bring them to our side because they are natural allies to us. They're telling teachers that in choice situations, 1, kids are not safe. 2, special needs kids are not being serviced. 3, unqualified teachers are in choice schools, including homeschools, and that homeschooled kids don't get enough time with other kids. They're told that choice schools get the top kids and public schools get all the problem kids. So that makes public school teachers look like we're not any good. They're told that choice advocates like you and me hate teachers, that we're against teachers. They're told, and by the way, I've heard all these arguments during teacher union meetings we're all forced to attend because they happen right in the middle of our staff meeting every week. So teachers are hearing this constantly. Teachers are told that choice is draining money from public schools, that choice leaders are making money off of kids, and that we're all evil, that somehow public schools are the only legitimate schools, even though our schools were never public at the beginning of this country. That's all, the unions have twisted that too. That teachers, if choice wins, teachers will lose their jobs, their pay, their pension, all their security. In other words, they won't be able to feed their own kids or pay their mortgage. The unions make it very personal. They're very underhanded. Teachers are told that choice people like you and I, are blaming teachers for all the poor performance in America's schools. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a minute. The unions also corrupted the PTA. I have a whole chapter on this in the book. They, in the 60s and 70s, bullied the PTA so extreme at the state and national levels that the PTA had to take a stance of neutrality. So now PTAs, parents at the local level don't know this. They're just working hard for their kids. Most of the dues money goes up. And these parents are never allowed to take any stance against the teacher union stance. That's why you see parents out picketing during teacher strikes. That's why you see parents very confused about school choice. If you talk to a PTA president mom, PTA, someone very involved in PTA, they'll likely be against school choice. They've been manipulated and deceived. At the end, I'm going to talk to you about adopt a teacher and adopt a parent. Those are the people I want you to adopt. Teachers, particularly public school, and parents. And we'll talk about that more at the end. The unions have also corrupted the Libraries Association, the School Board Association, every association, corrupted all the way around our schools. The unions are guilty of every lie they tell about you and me. But teachers don't know that. They're deceived. So, because teachers don't know, teachers keep doing things against their own benefit, against their own profession, against their own students. It is truly diabolical. That is the best word I can come up with to describe the unions. What's the true heart of teachers? Teachers are our natural allies. They are our friends, not our foes. So especially if you're writing about this subject, or if you're speaking on radio, or you're speaking out anywhere on this subject, never, 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 never say anything negative about teachers. Never. Okay, and I'm going to teach you some ways to do that. Here's what teachers really want. Teachers want choice for their own kids, and most of them get it. Teachers want safety, superior education, and success for all kids. And they're frustrated when they see kids who aren't getting it. They're frustrated when bad teachers are protected too. Here's the problem. Teachers only hear the union side of the story, so they believe the lies. They do not know that the only reason all kids aren't getting those great things is the unions, and they think that choice is the problem. So in other words, we need to educate teachers. They just don't know better. Okay. Now, flipping the ratio. We keep losing by the same ratio. How do we flip it? How do we get the 60% in our favor and the 40%, well, hey, how about 100% in our favor? Because we're right, okay? And I loved Mike's prayer. We have God on our side. There is no doubt. We're fighting for good. We're fighting for what's right. We're fighting against evil. So, okay, we've got all the right things on our side. Now we just have to flip those people in the middle who are deceived, the teachers, the PTA parents of the world. Okay, so we have tried for years to win this race with the exact same messaging. What do we need to change? Our message. Message, message, message. We must focus our message from, don't shoot me. We have got to quit leading with test scores. Not saying that we don't talk about test scores, not saying that we don't use that as proof along the line. Very proud of test scores at the charter school my husband's president of. Very proud, but we don't lead with that. We lead with compelling stories. Okay, well, yeah, somebody gets it. Must be John Barry, he gets story. We lead with compelling stories. What kind of stories? Stories that highlight great teachers, vulnerable, needy kids, and evil, corrupt unions. I'm going to tell you one right now. This is a story in my book. Little girl named Nicole. She lives here in Southern California. Nicole was getting all D's and F's. She was depressed. She was wearing black every day. She was in elementary school. All D's and F's. Nicole's parents couldn't figure out what was wrong. I know Nicole well. I would sit down with Nicole and work with her. I helped her with long division. She got it like that. I said, there's nothing wrong with this child. She gets it. But she's getting D's and F's. Later, they discovered Nicole had an absence seizure problem. She was zoning out in absence seizures like 100 times every morning in class. So she wasn't learning, but no one knew it. So they get her help with that, and she's still getting D's and F's in the public school. They find an amazing charter school. She gets in the charter school. Within a few months, all A's and B's, cheerful, popular, everyone loves her. She stops wearing black. She's so happy. The diabolical unions closed down her school that year. She's back to D's and F's. That's evil. Anyone can see that's evil. That sweet child is suffering. She's in high school now. Her parents still can't get her the school she needs because they don't have the money to choose a private school. And the diabolical unions closed down her charter. That's evil. I went to the State House and I spoke to the Senate Education Committee and I told Nicole's story. Evil Senator Leyva attacked me after I shared that story. Why did she attack me? Because I dared to say to the Education Committee that when the unions come to you and lobby against school choice, they're not speaking for me and they're not speaking for loving teachers. Listen to teachers. She attacked me for that. It's on video. Let's get it out there. That's the kind of story we need to lead with, right? Great teachers, vulnerable, needy child being hurt by evil unions and their evil politicians who are in their pockets. Oh, I forgot the best part. Senator Leva's kids are in private school. After you tell those stories, you'll get teachers. They'll go, hey, that's wrong. I want to help that little kid. You'll get teachers on your side. Right now, teachers are blamed. And the problem with leading with test scores, I'm going to tell you another story. I'm a storyteller. It's part of being a good teacher. We're storytellers. Another reason you need to tell stories to reach teachers. Here's why teachers feel blamed. The school choice movement has been leading with test scores and stats and data. Okay, let me just, day in the life of a teacher. I taught kinder through 4th grade. I taught in a school of 42 languages, lower income neighborhood. Every color of the rainbow, I didn't notice colors of my students. We're all different colors. All different languages. We were all friends. We were all doing great till the unions came in to try to divide us. But on my campus, when I was teaching 4th grade, every year, same story. First day of school. Have I had any impact on those kids on the first day of school? No, none. First day of school. I would test every single child on the first day of school. I would test them on reading comprehension and reading vocabulary. First day of school, every year, 1/3 of my students would test at a primer level. That's kindergarten. They're 4th graders. Another third would test somewhere between 1st and 3rd grade level. Another third would test around grade level, like 3rd to 4th, and a few, like a handful, would be above grade level. I'm supposed to teach that class by myself. And then some school choice person's going to come pick on me and say that I'm not doing a good job. And I'm working my tail off, long hours, volunteering after school to give these kids extra help, helping their parents. I would bring those kids who were kindergarten level on day 1. By the end of the year, I'd get them to 3rd grade level. That's 3 years progress in 1 year, right? That's huge, okay? Now, I don't say that to say I'm a great teacher. I'm just like every other teacher, or good teacher. I'm working hard. It's not rocket science. It's practice. It's phonics. If you know what you're doing, it's easy. Well, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's not brainiac. Then some school choice person would say, those test scores aren't high enough, because my students still wouldn't pass because they still weren't at the 4th grade level. Only that 1/3 that was actually prepared could pass the standardized testing. So you wouldn't see the growth. Now, I know that they do growth and all that now, but nobody's focusing on that when teachers are listening. That's not what all teachers hear is, they're blaming me and I'm working my butt off. What's going on? We can't do that anymore. We can't let teachers feel blamed, because what happens is they run right back into the arms of the union. Protect me, they all hate me, they're all picking on me. Don't let the unions control our messaging. Okay, so, lead with stories. Well, let me go over my, 2 more things, sorry, and then I'll go over just the highlights. Okay, for 30 plus years, I've been trying to get teachers to listen about their unions, because I figured out the unions were a problem when I was a student teacher, stories in the book. And then I served as a union leader for 3 years. And I saw one of my brave friends in the room who served as a union leader for years. She's amazing. You got to talk to her. When you serve on the inside and you see the corruption, you go, oh my gosh, most teachers have no idea how bad it is. So for 30 plus years, I couldn't get teachers to listen until 2 things happened. 2 things happened, and they just happened. The sex ed, which you need to message SEXXX ed, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. And if you just label it sex ed, they're going to go, they're a bunch of more, what do they call us when we don't, what are they? Prudes. They're a bunch of prudes. But if you put XXX, oh, what? Now they get it, okay? The sex ed and the equity discipline policies that came down during the Obama administration, those 2 things have turned our classrooms on their head. All of a sudden, teachers are listening. But I go out and I talk to all kinds of conservatives, and they say, oh, we don't talk about the social issues. Stop that. All the left does is talk about social issues. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So the left talks social issues, social issues, social issues, and they say, don't talk politics, don't talk politics. And then that's all they do, is talk politics. Look, we got to talk about the social issues. Why? Because it's the only thing teachers care about, and it's the only thing parents care about. Right now, the two that are, we could win the whole country on these two issues, the discipline and the sex ed. Because here's what teachers don't know. The teachers' union is behind all of it. They're behind the discipline, the horrible discipline. Our classrooms are war zones, and they're behind the sex ed, which I won't mention because there's children in the room tonight. But I'm going to tell you one story about a teacher who's in my book. His name's Aaron Benner. Aaron Benner is one of the best teachers I know. Outstanding disciplinarian. He also happens to be black. These racial equity discipline policies, if you know about them, we're not allowed to suspend kids of color. It's ridiculous, arbitrary, right? Doesn't have anything to do with behavior, has to do with color. We're going to divide everybody by color. Aaron, a black teacher, he can speak to this, right? So he does in my book. Aaron was teaching in his classroom, had his students, under control. A kid ran in the room, picked up a computer, slammed it on the ground, and ran out. Now he can't teach. Everybody's upset. That child was never disciplined. He was still on campus all day, the next day, the next day. So their classrooms and their schools have become war zones. He watched as a 4th grade little boy punched a little girl in the nose, knocked her out cold. A 4th grader. No one disciplined that child. The mother of the little girl, 2 days later, Aaron called to check on her. The principal had never called the mother. She didn't even know, okay? This is evil, and the teachers don't know. Teachers' unions are behind it. Those stories are in the book, and more. So these are the things we have to teach teachers. Okay, so I'm just gonna go over the messaging. Here's the basics of the messaging. 1, unions divide and conquer. Don't let them. 2, teachers are our friends, not our foes. Let's get them on our team. 3, lead with winning stories, not test scores. 4, social issues. YES, social issues. Yes, 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 talk about them, especially the 2 I mentioned. And quit letting the enemy dictate our message. We lead our message, they don't. Quit being afraid of them. You know what? I want to tell you something about bullies. When you stand up to a bully, they're suddenly chickens. Because they stand, you've all seen the Christmas Story. And that kid finally wallops them. And they're scared. That's the unions. That's the unions. We used to get, during our lawsuit, the most common question people asked me was, are you afraid for your life during our lawsuit? And some people still ask me that. But what was amazing was we would get these insider stories from people inside the union who didn't agree with us. And they'd come to me and they'd go, Rebecca, the unions are terrified of you. And I'd go, what? I'm a 5'4" kindergarten teacher. They were terrified of me because I spoke the truth. And I spoke the truth without fear. That's what we need to do. Speak the truth. We're right. Okay, lastly, we're outspent 100 million to 1. Right? Are we going to get discouraged? No. Here's why. We've got God on our side. And David won, right? David won with one smooth stone. Okay? But our lawsuit and a lawsuit that came behind ours freed every public sector employee from forced unionism. They just don't know it. They're all still in those unions, but they don't have to pay them anymore. But they don't know it. And a lot of them think the unions are good when they're really bad. So we just have an education campaign to do. We educate, 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 and help people out. Every teacher we've given a copy of my book, even if they were union leaders, have left the union. The only ones who stayed in are the ones who are there as moles who are trying to, feed us information. So it's just educating them. So we have a chance to free them. So we have a program we call Adopt a Teacher. Adopt a school board member, adopt a PTA member, adopt a pastor, adopt. Anyone you know who's believing these lies, educate them. Help teachers stop funding these unions, get teachers on our team instead of on the opposite team, and we can win. And that's all I have to say to you today. Thanks for listening.
All right, let's give her another round of applause here. Rebecca, thank you so much. Fantastic. Now, we're going to have a panel right now. Jonathan, I think what we're going to do right now is to serve the dessert. Is that correct? Great. Great. So, yeah, we'll take a little break, serve the dessert, grab some coffee, and then when you're about half to two-thirds of the way through, then we'll start the panel and so forth. And thank you, everybody, for coming. What a great crowd. See you in 5.
Well, thank you so much, and it is a pleasure to be back here again in California. I am so honored to be here. I am a research fellow with the Independent Institute in Oakland, California. However, I am not a Californian. I think that makes me the odd person out on this panel. I am actually from Arizona, and as many of you may know, Arizona is considered ground zero, a national leader in parental rights and education. Name a choice program, chances are Arizona came up with it. If you go right next door, you are not assigned to a district public school. You can pick any public district school, charter schools, which we do not cap, homeschooling without having to play Mother May I with the state. We have 4 private school scholarship programs, and I'm very proud that we were the first state to have an educational savings account program. I also have, thank you, we have some of the best research experts in the country right here at this table, and we're happy to talk about that if you have questions later, but I'd like to share something. This is not an academic issue for me. I'm a stepmom of 4 boys, all of whom went through district public schools. I have 3 of whom are in district public schools now. So all the myths you hear about draining, bad for teachers, test scores go down, traditional public schools don't do as well. I am living, breathing proof that my boys today are getting a better education with all the choice and competition that I got when I was a student about 100 years ago before we had choice. So I would like to begin actually by our panelists submitted questions, and I think it's a really good way to frame the conversation and frame the debate. So I'm actually going to start with Keith. Keith, if you would introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. And Keith's question is, what does school choice have in common with the first American Revolution of 1776?
Wow. I chose that question because, in my environment, I receive, I work with mostly Latinos and blacks, in the inner city schools of Los Angeles. Probably about 90%, don't quote me on it, but 90% Latino by now, and maybe about 7 or 8% black. But the point I want to make is that I talk to teachers often, and the teachers and I have a good relationship there, even though, they know that I'm a conservative, and kids are always constantly coming up to me asking, why do you support Trump? You like Trump. Trump's a racist, the whole stuff. I get it all the time. But as Rebecca kind of laid the groundwork here, it's important to realize that you've got to have a good narrative, be a storyteller. So I'm going to answer that question by telling a quick story. This is what I say to the kids. And I actually had this happen with me. Let me tell the story about the teacher. The teacher wanted to know about this. What does the school choice movement have in common with the American Revolution? Well, I started out by saying, when the founders and the American people compared the natural law to the tyrannical British laws of the king, they concluded that they were justified in their revolution by appealing to the supreme judge of the world. Now, think about that for a moment. That's part of there are 4 principles in the Declaration that I teach. I talk to kids about in the lunch areas, on the schoolyards, not in the classrooms. Even though Lincoln said that today's philosophy in the classroom is tomorrow's philosophy of government. But I talk to the kids on the, when they're outside the classroom. So I basically would talk to them about these very things. And when the founders used that natural law principle, That is the key right there. We have a saying at my school. I've kind of changed the culture of the school, by the way, with this saying, with this quote. I always say, the laws of nature are advancing. And then the kids are finally starting to say that, laws of nature, laws of nature. And then finally kids would ask me, what is the laws of nature? It's just a rule of action. It's a rule of action established by the Creator. This is by Noah Webster. Established by the Creator to preserve life, liberty, and property. Think about it that way. We can endure certain evils in society if we know and understand the laws of nature. There are certain evils that we've had to endure, just like in life. We have to endure certain things in life. But where we stop enduring is when we say, life, liberty, and property are jeopardized. Life, liberty, and property. So I tell the kids that all the time. And anyway, back to the story real quickly. The teacher asked me about that, and I said, well, the right to consent is the third principle of the Declaration. The right to consent. We have a right to give our consent. The parents have their right to give their consent as to where their children go and attend. And so one teacher said to me, well, that's not good because some parents don't have the education. A lot of them can't even speak English because they're, the parents of DACA. So they don't speak English. So how could you? I said, well, doesn't that sound a little condescending? Because isn't that what they said about slavery? They said that the slaves were uneducated and therefore they shouldn't be free. So then he looked. You should have seen him change his demeanor. He looked at me and he said, he started stuttering. So my whole point to that is storytelling, building your narrative on the basis of what our true weapons are. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal but mighty through God, to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imagination, and bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. We do that through the principles of the founding. And the Bible is the first basis, the laws of nature and nature's God. So that's what I talk about.
Well, Keith, thank you so much. And I think that's when we talk about storytelling, which I think is so important, it can't just be boo this school or boo that school, much less teachers. I very rarely use the term school choice, actually, because this isn't about a parent's freedom to choose this school or that school. This is a parent's rights issue. This issue is about the God-given unalienable right of every parent, whether you're California, Arizona, or anywhere in the world, to direct the education and upbringing of your children. That's what we're fighting for. So we say school choice, but that's what an education savings account for all California families would do. It puts parents back in their God-given rightful place to educate their children as they, not governments, bureaucracies, or unions see fit. So next we have Mark Eng. And Mark, you do so much great work, and we're gonna have you tell us about yourself. And you had a great question. You had a great recommendation. You're going to talk to us about practical solutions, about informing the public, because it's very hard when you haven't had options for so long to say, right, you can go from picking vanilla ice cream or vanilla ice cream to go into the 31 flavors store.
No. Oh, I don't need that. I got the mic. Hello, everyone. I think a lot of people in the room know me. I'm Mark Eng. I started a few nonprofits really as a desire to get out to the community and push certain issues that were near and dear to my heart. Obviously, school choice is one of them, and so thankful for a great organization like School Choice 2020, and been working closely with them, with Ceci Iglesias' great work with Parent Union, and these organizations are the lifeblood of the movement. Because I think what we heard earlier, and Rebecca had a great idea about adopt a parent, adopt a teacher. That is so important because that is our first artery into getting our message outside of the echo chamber and actually hitting new people. Okay, as you see, that voting block of uninformed parents has become so big now that they're influencing elections, not because of any passion for public school education, but more, it's a collective block of apathy, is the way I see it. So we, as people that care about, obviously our society, our education system, have a responsibility to really reach out beyond the echo chamber and to make connections and to inform and be teachers ourselves to the community. So with what we've done with our organizations, Asian Industry B2B, People Encouraging People, and Pass the Beacon, those are 3 of my organizations, we have thrown events to creatively show what it means to have choices. And in fact, Denise Soto right there and I are working together on our next big event, which is a Education Choices Fair geared towards high school students on February 1st at the USC Verdugo Hills Hospital in Glendale. And the purpose of an event like that is to actually show parents who are in that crucial time of high school to say, hey, you have to be strategic about looking at your choices, not only for a 4-year college, which we know now, let's be real on this, it's really indoctrination camp. You have 4-year college liberal arts degrees, kids graduating 22 years old with no skills whatsoever. I mean, I constantly hire interns, and it's amazing. Every year I see that the talent pool is getting worse and worse. And I think the latest studies have come out where we have actual data of kids that have grown up with Common Core, and exactly what that has impacted their lack of math skills, lack of English skills. I mean, it is appalling. It is actual, like Rebecca said, it's diabolical what is being done. So it's important that, especially in a state like California, and unfortunately we're not as small as Arizona and manageable where you could start a movement, but we can start in our local areas. And I want to shine the light on someone like Ceci Iglesias, who in Santa Ana has been like a one-woman fighter and has started a movement. And now I see Santa Ana compared to other urban environments is actually, the average parent there understands, at least in the very basics, that they have a choice and they don't have to be given, they don't have to eat that turd sandwich that is being given to them. So, it starts with one person, okay? And just opening up that little nugget of saying, you have a choice. Charter schools are a choice, okay? Private schools are a choice. Supplemental education is a choice. And, that's where it starts. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Well, I think that's something we should all keep in mind. No one deserves a turd sandwich. But Mark, you also brought up something that I think dovetails very well into a subject I'd like to talk about with Larry, whom I've had the pleasure of knowing for, I think it's been 15 years now. One of the first people I met when I lived in Sacramento for a time, advocating for parental choice, and I found one of my strongest allies among teachers of all people through Larry. So Larry, I was wondering, one of the things that I think is the biggest misconception about parental rights in education and school choice is that, oh, that's some vast right-wing conspiracy policy, which is interesting, even though charter schools actually came from the other side politically. So how should we talk about this? Should we talk about it politically, or?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much. We have known each other quite a while. Okay, my name is Larry Sand. I'm the president of the nonprofit California Teachers Empowerment Network. I'm a writer. Okay. I'm a writer. I speak publicly, and I speak usually about union issues, as Rebecca well knows, and as Vicki knows, I speak about school choice. And it's very important to recognize that this is not a right-left thing. Just a few names that you may or may not know: Jack Koons, Terry Moe, Steve Sugarman, Ben Austin, Michelle Reed, Gloria Romero. These are lefties. And they are, in Jack's case, he wrote a book 40 years ago on the importance of school choice. These are all passionate people, and we just need to remember that. There's certainly a bad side to the left. The teacher union left is lost. We don't need to talk to them. But there's a left of center group that is very important constituency. Also, and everybody, we're talking about messaging, so I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents on that also, that this is about more than school choice, it is parental choice. It's parents' right. We feed our kids food we want, take them to the doctors we want, Let them listen to the music we want them to listen to. We should send them to the schools that we want to send them to. It's about educational freedom. If you're speaking to somebody left of center, talk about civil rights. It's certainly a civil rights issue. If you're talking to people on the right, talk about liberty. It's certainly a liberty issue. Just a few things you can talk to people about. Now let's just say people on the left love Pell Grants. The teachers' unions love Pell Grants. This sends poor kids, or help pay poor kids' college tuition at most schools across the country, including religious schools like Notre Dame. They love that kind of school choice. They love Pell Grants, but on K through 12, oh no. You hate public education. What? I once posed this question to Ben Allen, the head of the education committee. Rebecca Friedrichs was in the room as she told her story about what happened when she was there, and I was there when Connie labeled it into her. It was unbelievable. Anyway, I made the point about Pell Grants to Ben Allen, the head of the education committee. He went, gee, that's a really good point. And we moved on from there, but most people don't think in these terms. People have choices when they buy yogurt, when they buy CDs, when they download music, when they buy cat food. Why not education? If you told me you were going out to dinner tomorrow night with a friend, your husband, your wife, I said, oh, you're going to go to that little restaurant down the street from where you live? And you say, no, I'm going to go to a restaurant across town. Much better food, much better service. I say, no, you have to go to that crappy little restaurant down the street from where you live. Yet this is how we do education in California and throughout much of the country. I would urge you to learn the talking points. The educational establishment will tell you that it hurts public schools. School choice hurts public schools. Greg Foster, who's a researcher, found that academic outcomes improve in public schools where choice has been in play 31 out of 33 times. One was neutral. Only one study showed that school choice actually hurt public schools. But I'll take 31 to 1 any day. In addition to public schools improving, it has certainly a positive impact on taxpayers, a positive impact on desegregation. It helps poor people, most of all, and it actually increases teacher salaries. Why? Competition works. We have competition everywhere else. Oh. Anyway, I was just going to say we have competition everywhere else in the United States. Why not in education? Also, if you want to familiarize yourself with facts, EdChoice is a wonderful organization, the preeminent organization, as I'm sure Ms. Alger will agree with. Call them or send them an email, sign up with them, and you'll get a ton of information. Good information, real information, not what you get from the teachers' unions. Thank you very much.
Well, I'd like to add very quickly to what Larry just said about all the myths that we hear in EdChoice, just edchoice.org, and go to town, it's great. But in terms of public schools being harmed, district public schools being harmed, I'm here to tell you that the opposite is true. When my second oldest stepson was in middle school, he had just started middle school, so he was going into 6th grade. This is in Arizona. We don't live in a rural area. We live in a suburban area. They didn't offer Spanish in Arizona. That was too exotic. If you wanted to take Spanish, parents could spend $300 for like one of those programs you could buy online for half the price. Needless to say, the Algers did not opt for that choice. But thankfully, what did happen is right up the block, Basis Charter Schools opened up another campus. If you haven't heard about Basis, check out U.S. News and World Report. A Basis school pretty much dominates the top 20 public high school rankings in the United States of America. So Basis opens up a school in less than 9 months, by the way. Less than 9 months from when you dug to the ground to when it opened up. And guess what they started offering? For no extra charge. Not only Spanish and more exotic languages like, French, but they also offered Mandarin, Latin, Greek. So in 7th grade, 2 of my stepsons now have been able to study Mandarin, and they're also studying Spanish. So you want to know if competition hurts children left in those, those poor district public schools? That's phony baloney. It's a tide that lifts all boats. Now, next, speaking of tide that lifts all boats, I believe this may be the first time we've met in person, Cecilia. I know you by your work. Just fantastic work. Cecilia is the executive director of Education and Community Relations at the California Policy Center, which if you aren't reading their information, you need to start doing it immediately. Fantastic work. And Cecilia, I'd love to hear more about the great work you're doing.
She have one down there?
You have a mic?
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So my name is Cecilia Iglesias, and I am currently the Director of Education and Community Relations for the California Policy Center. We're housed out of Orange County, in Tustin specifically. My role with the California Policy Center is to oversee this project that is called the Parent Union. And the Parent Union, what we do is teach parents how to advocate for their rights to be the best advocate when it comes to parental choice. I predominantly work with the Latino community in Santa Ana, and the reason I got involved was because in 2012 I was elected to the school board. So I served on the Santa Ana Unified School District Board of Education for 6 years. And my first year in office, it was an eye-opener. I got to see a lot of the shenanigans that happen behind closed doors. And especially the way like Rebecca was saying, the bullies of the teachers union, and the way they manipulate our staff, which is the teachers and also our classified staff. But the first thing, if you guys recall in Prop 30, 2012 when it passed, it was for districts that were predominantly poor districts because they didn't have the money so they can provide the added curricular activities to the kids because, in Santa Ana, they're just not wealthy enough to have access to all these programs. So what happened, the first thing that happens, money comes to the district, and that was I remember it was about in 2013 we started talking about it. First thing comes to the district, we were being given $108 million additional a year in Santa Ana. Santa Ana, our budget already was close to $700 million a year because we serve about 56,000 students. So then we have $108 million coming more. So our budget was about $840 million. And the first thing that happens when this extra money comes, of course, it's not for the kids. That's how they sold it to us, the voters, that it was for the kids going to the classrooms. First thing they do is take a chunk out of it. They negotiated raises in the tune of about 12% of their raise. So it was about $40 million directly stripped from the kids. And for me, what really motivated me was here, the union is telling the parents we don't have enough money to give you guys, the extra money for the SATs or the extra money to send your kids to field trips, the extra money to give you all the material that you guys need in order for the kids to be successful, for tutoring, for all this. This is what the parents want. So I remember that, parents would come to me, the fact that, like you were saying, in Santa Ana, many of our community, the parents are Spanish speaking, so they don't have that, they didn't have like that ability or maybe that comfort level to go to a school board member to ask them is like what's really going on. But I was raised, one of my upbringing is that I was raised in the church. My mom was a pastor, so I'm very comfortable in being out in the community and showing up where we need to be in order for us to organize and really talk to our parents. So the parents knew me already, so they started asking me, it's like, we want more tutoring, we want more resources for our kids, but our teachers are saying we don't have enough money. So then what I started doing, thank God for social media, sometimes it could either be something used to benefit you or sometimes it could hurt you. But I started using it for a benefit, so I started reporting out what was going on in the school district, the things that I could report out, and I would translate it into Spanish. And I would tell them, this is what's going on. They want to take away your money. They want to do this. So things that I could legally share with them. Oh my gosh, the parents were getting outraged. And like Rebecca was saying, the PTA has a strong hold on our parents. and they lied to them. So, the things that we started doing with a group of parents, there was about 12 of us in 2015, because I voted against the raise. Because I said, you know what, it's not that I don't believe teachers should get compensated. I want it on merit, based on performance. If you could, yeah, oh yeah. So when I started asking and demanding accountability, oh my God, I was a target. I was a target for them for forever. So they started lumping me in, so with all the conservative, the right, the far right, and so in 2015, I remember they started picketing, not picketing, but protesting me. They would come to the school board meetings, and they just wanted me out because how dare I ask for accountability? How dare I say that that our students they're not proficient? And I would bring up the stats, and I know sometimes you say we shouldn't talk about stats. Yes, we should talk about stats, because our kids are failing in Santa Ana. Our kids, I was like, and I would compare it to other districts. I say, why can't our kids be like Newport? Why can't our kids be like Irvine? So when parents started seeing that we could be, if given that they were the priority. So when we started doing that, of course, naturally I became a target for the teachers union. So in 2015, they started coming after me. They wanted to recall me. When I was on the school board, they're like, recall Ceci, recall. So they would, oh my God, they just come in numbers, because they pay the people to show up, and they also manipulate our parents. So so when I started doing that, and in 2016, and I remember, so going back to the parents, so we started like giving this information out in social media. So then when the parents knew that I was about them, I was about school choice. So when in 2016, when the re-election came, they tried to, they would lump me in like with, unfortunately, they would use me against the Democrats, and would say I was with President Trump, that I wanted to deport the kids, I wanted to put kids in cages, I wanted to do all this, and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah. So they came after me. They spent about $200,000 to try to unseat me. But the thing that really helped is talking about school choice and talking about parent empowerment. So, lo and behold, the election happened, and I got reelected with the highest votes, because parents did not believe their lies. So we saw that the parent union, uniting parents, was very effective. So we formed this little chapter out of 15 of us. It grew within months. It grew to about 600 of us on social media, talking about what was happening in Santa Ana, what was happening. So they were so excited that this really helped. So in a way, what I said about organizing parents, it also helps for us to educate them. So when we come to elections, they're informed, and they're not going to take like all the negative information that's being presented to them about Republicans, that Republicans are all against the kids, because I'm a Republican, and a lot of people they use that against me, but the parents didn't believe it. Santa Ana is 70% Democrat, and it's about 80% Latino. But you can see the power when you communicate and you really take their best interest at heart, so they'll see that. So the parent union has been a project that once I in 2016, the California Policy Center hired me to be their director, because they saw how effective that was. So I started with Santa Ana. That's how we grew, and we're very strong in Santa Ana. But now with the support of the California Policy Center, we have grown chapters in Riverside, in San Diego. We're starting in LA. And then also definitely in Orange County. We're in Anaheim, Costa Mesa, and in Huntington Beach. So there's power in organizing parents and boots on the ground. So that's what really helps. And that's something that I am hoping, when delivering your message, that what we have to do is take it to the people, and people are going to listen. So I'm very excited about this petition for 2020. Count us in with the California Policy Center and the Parent Union. We're going to be there together. So thank you so much.
And I think that's so important, the boots on the ground, because we've got great research, we've got people running for office, and again, please run for school board. You want to know where in any given state, majority of the budget's going to be spent on K-12, and the ones who decide how it's spent is your school boards. So even if you can't run for school board, I would start getting people in your neighborhoods, in your communities. All right, I'm going to watch the meeting or go to the meeting. We should be able to streamline the meetings. You should be able to watch it. have 2 people on call every month. Watch out around, what would it be, March or April, where you're deciding what the budget's going to be and all of that. That's going to be key months. But partner together. Watch those school boards and get on social media, get on the radio, because the one thing they don't like, they do have shame. That's one thing they have going for them, because they will be shamed into backing off of votes. We're seeing that in Arizona as they're bringing the sex, triple X, even worse than California, to our schools. And in Tucson, parents got out the word, and a very arrogant superintendent who thought, oh, I'm Hispanic, and so people are going to vote for me just because of, my last name. When parents found out, there's been a steady stream at his door ever since. And the beautiful thing about parental choice is you either stop it, or our kids are going to go to St. Teresa's up the street, or they're going to go to the charter school, or they're going to be homeschooled. So it's critically important. Free market. And I am so excited for our last panelist, Miss Ashley Gilliam. You have done so much, and you are so passionate. I'm going to just ask a very blunt question, because we saw some scores come out. We're reading horrible things in the news. Do black minds matter under the status quo?
That's a good question. Before I answer it, though, I just want to say that Mr. Alexander, every time I get with him in a meeting, he reminds me of Judge Judy's courtroom. You know how she shushes adults? He's about the only one that do that besides her. He does that a lot. I don't take any offense to it, but he just reminds me, so I'm start calling him Judge Alexander from this point. So anyway, but he's a great guy. But anyway, I have been doing historical talks with those you guys know for a number of years now. And what I try to do is dispel a lot of the myths and rumors that are out there, especially for black Americans. They really have been indoctrinated with a lot of false information. And so my job is to really try to give them good information. So that way when they decide to vote, they will have it on informed decision. I tell them all the time, don't take what I say or anybody else says. If I give you information, you need to go study for yourself and find out whether what I'm saying is true, and don't go to one source. Go to numerous sources to find out, and then you have your own information, and then you make those informed decisions. This is just gonna be brief here, but I'm a stats person, too, and I believe in painting a picture using stats. This is the 400th year of blacks landing here in the United States of America. About 20 Africans came at that point, that first slave ship. Throughout the centuries, Africans literally risked their life and limb to learn how to read. They were tortured, murdered, raped, just for learning how to read. But guess what? They learned how to read anyway, okay? There was no safe spaces. They knew from early on that education was the key to success in the society. And not only did black people or Africans, they survived, but they thrived in that environment. We were the scientists and the mathematicians. There was a time when blacks valued education. And what I'm going to do just briefly, because this talk I'm doing is not that long either. But sometimes, when I listen to people, they think that we're ignorant and dumb because of the fact that that's what the news media told you. And the last 50 years, that's the mode we've been in. But let me just tell you a few things that black people have invented or whatever, over the centuries, whatever, so you be aware of everything you enjoy pretty much right now, and all these modern conveniences pretty much came from black or Africans. The gear shifts, bicycle frame, blood plasma bag, cellular phone, the indoor commode, clothes dryers, curtain rods, door stops, dustpan, egg beater, electric light bulb, elevator, eye protector, fire escape ladders, folding bed, folding chairs, fountain pen, gas mask, golf tee, guitar, sweet sweeper, thermostat control, tricycle, railroad signal. That NASA program wouldn't have been a NASA program. It wouldn't have been for those black women that pushed that program. That GPS system that you got getting here, black woman from NASA. Hand stamp, ice cream scooper, horseshoe, ironing board, keychains, lantern, lawnmower, lemon squeezer, locks, lunch pail, mop, motor, peanut butter, pencil sharpener, record player, refrigerator, rolling pin, spark plugs, stethoscopes, the stove, phone transmitter, traffic lights, typewriter, gas burner. Now you can, et cetera, et cetera. Now you can go to any site you want to. What I just read you, you can see 10 more pages of that. And the reason we were able to do that, because we value education. We were the scientists and the mathematicians in this environment. We moved from that in 1965. 75% of black children were born out of God-centered marriages, moms and dads, where the family, the church, and the school all work together to be that cornerstone of the community. Then what happened in the 60s, and we'll go on that, you hear one of my talks, the government got hold to our community. Okay, they said they wanted to help us. So you don't have to go to Venezuela or any place else. We had socialism right here in the United States. They took a population that were the inventors and the workers, put them on these social programs, that's where your welfare programs came in, on purpose, and after that period of time, look what happened to us at this period of time. Our families have been decimated with the social experiments that actually failed. Okay, now let's advance through 50 years, okay? And these are some just general statistics. Sometimes you read different places, you get different statistics, but this is overall. In 2014, 75% of black children were born out of wedlock. In 50 years, there have been a complete reversal of what our families used to look like. 75% of black boys in California don't meet the state reading and writing standards. 50% of black boys in California don't meet the state English standards. 80% of black boys fail to meet state reading standards by the 4th grade, and a large percentage of those kids will end up on welfare, homeless, jail, or in the graveyard. 60% of juvenile delinquents and 80% of adults inmates are illiterate. 48% of black boys in California do not finish high school. So if you don't even get a high school diploma, what are your chances even of surviving a few years out of high school? Okay, California black students are twice as likely as white students to be identified as learning disabilities and more likely to be identified for special education in general ed. They're putting a lot of our kids, because they don't want to deal with them in special education classes. So they put them in the corners, we don't want to deal with you, they're not being educated at all. When I was growing up years ago, 50s and 60s, sometimes in the South, we had health education classes where, you know, the boys went to one class for a week, the girls went to another class, and then we learned about, you know, biology, and then we came back together. What they have now is how-to sex education classes, okay? This is the reason that California rates probably 46 or 48 out of 50 states now. Our kids are not being educated. Now I call this care, okay? Instead of talking about condoms, we need to be talking about chemistry. Instead of talking about anal sex, we need to talk about arithmetic. Instead of right to abortion, we need to talk about reading and writing. And instead of talking about education in sex, how to, we need to be talking about some English. Because these kids cannot read or write. So what we're doing now, the sex education has replaced basic education for our children. Now and it's not the school's fault, it's not the union's fault. 50 years ago, parents, we relinquished and gave up control of our children to the government. And it's time for us to step up as parents, because a lot of parents want that control back, but sometimes they feel it's out there by themselves, okay? We need to form coalitions, let these parents know they're not out there by themselves. And like I said, the unions may be strong, the government may be strong, and maybe that's a few thousand people. But if I got 10 million parents coming to you, telling you what you are gonna do, guess what's gonna happen? You are going to do it, or we're going to put you out of office, okay? So we have all the power, just taking the power back. Now I'm going to end this with what Martin Luther King said, okay? This is a quote for him. The function of education is to teach one to think intensely and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that's a goal of true education. Thank you.
Well, that was just, well, you can't top that. So what I'm going to do is I would like to open it up to our audience for questions. How did they, you know, what forms of parental choice are available? Is it really possible in California? Hint, hint, it is. We outnumber the opponents. That's right. We do. So what would be easiest? Just have people stand up, or shall we come up and have the microphone?
Yeah. Do we have a microphone in the audience?
You know, I'll pass the microphone.
Okay. All right. Do you have enough cord?
Yes, we do.
All right, good.
Well, you just have to come up here. You have to come up here and ask the questions. So
That'll be best.
So anyone have questions? Yep. First question, John Perry.
Yeah, howdy. First of all, I thought postponing until 2022 was a great move, because that's going to allow us to focus a lot. So my question is for how the AB 329 sex ed thing going on right now, how is that going to shape the political landscape for you in 2022? Is it going to waken up parents are they going to be more receptive to what you're there? Was this fortunate timing?
Well, I'll maybe take a crack at the political
Sure.
part of it here. Let me just say that what you see here on the panel here are all leaders in their own right. And there are leaders like this throughout the state, and you'll find many of them in religious organizations, for example, Calvary Church of Chino. Parents throughout the state are absolutely on fire over what's happening in the schools. And it isn't the test scores, it is the social issues, this indoctrination, but it's the gap between performance and indoctrination. And this sex ed agenda here has alienated large numbers of the electorate from them. And it's stacked on top of that, the one-party state, and you have a lot of Democrats, they're called parents, many of them, a huge number of them Latinos, outraged over this, combined with conservatives and Republicans and good government Democrats who are outraged over what's happening to our state. I think it's underestimated, and if we dig into this, we will be the central issue on the ballot in 2022. The governor, every senator, every congressman, every assemblyman, you name it, every one of those people are going to have to say whether they're for or against school choice, whether they're for or against families. And we're going to crucify them on the cross of school choice, believe me.
Yes.
And they're going to know where they are. George Soros is going to come out here. Vladimir Putin is going to walk precincts to keep this from spreading. Because remember, throughout the world, there is no place that has school choice. In every country in the world, it is marked. Its hallmark is that government controls the education of the children. This is the most revolutionary idea since the Declaration of Independence.
Amen. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. And I just wanted to give a great thank you to Michael and to Mike and Jonathan and Steve and all of you guys for putting this spectacular event on. And all of you panel members and Rebecca and everybody, it's terrific. And I know that from the most disenfranchised young single mother that Ceci has been able to give hope to arguably the godfather of the probably the #1 school in the country, according to Forbes, Caltech, who I just heard last week talk about the #1. He said, what is the biggest issue that we keep spending more and more and more money on, and failing and failing and failing? And I said, education. And he said, that's absolutely right. And that was the subject of a speech at a tech conference in Washington with some of the top tech people in the world. Anyway, to get to my question, it's a new one for anyone. I want to know if anybody up there knows about something I just read about, I think yesterday, in the Daily News, that apparently they're talking in Sacramento about a new law that requires that every child be evaluated, mentally evaluated before they sign into join the public schools, psychologically evaluated to assess their risk. Has anybody heard about this? Yes. Okay, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because obviously that's the next thing we need to fight, and I think parents will be horrified.
I'd like to pass the mic around. This isn't just a California thing. Again, I call it the unholy trinity. We have the unions, Planned Parenthood, and and all these other groups, politicized groups behind it. Mental health screening sounds really good, doesn't it? We're all for, well, why do you hate children and why do you hate mental health? Well, who could be opposed to this? Basically, it's a way of gathering information about your children. In fact, there are lawsuits going on right now over this because parents get a stack of stuff at the beginning of the year. And sure, I'll have my kids screened. I want to make sure they're emotionally in a good place, they're ready to learn. It's a way for schools and third parties to gather all sorts of personal information about your children, including sexual preferences. Do you ever touch yourself there? I mean, I'm going to stop there because it goes on. But it's another way of taking information about your children and your family without parental consent.
Gun ownership.
I just want to read briefly from California Education Code Section 51240A. If any part of the school's instruction health conflicts with the religious training and beliefs of the parent or guardian of a pupil, the pupil, upon written request of the parent or guardian, shall be excused from the part of the instruction that conflicts with the religious training and beliefs. Now, she specifically mentioned the mental part of it. There is an opt-out law that covers that as well. I didn't bring it with me. I didn't put it on, but I did see that, and I assure you, I wish maybe when they're answering questions, I can look it up again. But I had it with me earlier. This is the education code that I shared with you about the sex education, so-called the XXX education. But there is also one because the Health Youth Act, AB 329, is part of the health education. Herein enters the 51240 Education Code, the provision of the law that frees students from health instruction that conflicts with the family's religious or personal moral conviction. This includes gender roles and sexual orientation lessons in the context of health education. I think that the one that she specifically mentioned, Jenny mentioned, is a different education code. But there are opt-out laws that you can take part of. So yes, there are, and it's in the education code. If anybody else wants to chime in on it. Oh, okay.
Check. Yeah. I want to bring up a very important point, I think, that's not very often talked about around this, is what makes these psychologists so damn qualified that they can go in and basically usurp the rights of parents and say, oh, okay, you can have a sex change without your parents' consent and this and that. I mean, this is the latest in overstepping of certain professionals that are out there. And I really like, I always bring it back to what do you sit and talk to your neighbors about and get them to wake up the sleeping giant? Talk about these things that are very basic, okay? Who wants to give up their kid to go to school and basically have the state take over them and spoil your relationship with your children? Okay, that's the bottom line here.
Thanks for putting this on tonight. And we in the Redlands Tea Party Patriots have been working on the committee, and we're pleased to, and this is now is the time. Both out of necessity, I think we all recognize the school choice is a country and civilizational existential issue. But it's also, and here's my question, I want to get your input on this. The war we are about to undertake is like no political war there's ever been fought in this country before. We are striking at the heart and the foundation, like Rebecca said, we are at the root of the enemy. And they will do anything to defeat this. Money, dirty tricks, lawsuits, anything. Do you guys have any thoughts about how we're going to gather 3 million signatures to try to get 900,000 something valids approved by the Democrats that work in the various registrars' offices, overcome the lawsuits, overcome the deliberate sabotage if this passes? How do we, because the public is there. Polls show it, the public is there. How do we win this war?
Just just briefly, in my community, I've been talking about this a lot too. Every black mother or father I talk to, when I tell them what we're doing or whatever, the first thing is said, Miss Gilliam, where do I sign? Now, just to give us some hope here, you guys know when Ron DeSantis run governor of Florida, okay? 600,000 black women voted, okay? They were Democrat women, okay? 100,000 of those black women broke away from that Democratic Party to vote for him. That's how he got in office. The word got out, we want to put our kids first, you are not going to deny us what we want. And once we get to the point we really start getting the word out, parents will just flock what we're trying to do, like they did. More parents, if they would have been informed when they did so. The power's there, we just got to take that power back. And once they see, if we can use examples in other states, what's going on there, California is ripe for being taken back. It's us being involved. The few people here, it can grow from here, whatever, but getting involved. Your churches are a big one in our community and stuff too. Non-profits. But we want to start, we're going to start some with Mr. Harding and I and another lady. We're going to start hitting the churches, the bigger ones and stuff too, that really want to hear. They've asked us, can you come out and talk to us about here? Parents are ready. We just have to put it before them. And I think if we do that in our own communities and stuff too, it can grow from there, and always have a petition available with you at the time. But somebody else may want to take that also.
Anybody else? Yeah, a lot of this is, and by the way, that was Greg Britton who asked that question. Greg has been part of the Redlands Inland Patriots, a Tea Party here for years. And you also have a radio program on the local station. Which one is that again?
AM 590, The Answer.
That's it? That's it? All right, so be sure to listen to him. And on Sunday nights, if you're in the Los Angeles area, you can listen to me at Radio Free Los Angeles on KRLA 870 AM The Answer from 8 to 9:30 p.m. We got one of my shills down here, Brent Gold, who calls in frequently. On the political strategy, it's as simple as it is difficult, and that is that everybody in this room is going to have to sacrifice. This is like the rest of our problems in our society. This is overwhelmingly a crisis of citizenship. We allowed ourselves to slide into this situation because we relaxed as citizens and the government moved into the void. So we're going to have to, each of us, work hard to gather those signatures. That's going to mean a financial commitment. But I can tell you this, these groups here today, these leaders that are up here, these are all independent leaders who have been working independent of our organization, in many cases for years. This is a kind of leadership that is in the state, and there are tens of thousands of people who are motivated, and those people will be recruited. So the key is going to be organization, and the key to that organization is substantial funding. And that's why our immediate fundraising goal is $250,000. Our intermediate fundraising goal is $5 million. I happen to believe, as you say, Greg, as we have talked many times, this is a compelling national issue, and I expect to see a lot of money come from outside the state. And I can tell you that hundreds of millions of dollars will be spent by the opponents of this bill, and I hope they spend it. Because if they win, we'll put it on and make them spend the rest. All right? Don't be afraid of their money, because every time they attack us, they'll have to say why. And in the meanwhile, we'll be talking to that Mexican mama, and we're going to be telling her that her kids are no longer stuck in that school that they're in, that they're going to have about, and Steve Smith will tell you about the plan, but they're going to have so much money each year per Nino to send to a school of their choice to choose their future. Whatever's left over can go for vocational school or college. That is a compelling message, and the teachers' unions have got nothing but tyranny to back them up. And I'm telling you, we're going to take their money away from them. It's our money, of course, but we're going to take back our money and our kids. That political strategy will evolve. We're forming a board of advisors. On that board of advisors will be several people at this table right now. That board of advisors will be broadened. It'll be regional, be throughout the state of California. Politicians, many of them, will be making their way to support us, and the rest of them, I hope, oppose us because we'll know who they are. We just need to get them out in the open where we can see them, and they're showing themselves. What a wonderful opportunity to change our state around and to reorganize it on issues rather than partisan lines. And I think that these issues join us all. I could talk much more. Greg, I hope that addresses at least part of your question. Okay.
Let me just add to everything that he said and the others say, just with a quick, short story that I don't know if anyone heard in the UK. Just recently, there was a story out that in the UK, 80% of the parents kept their children home, and it changed the school districts changed the curriculum, to suit the parents' values, because it was the LGBT, agenda, which is all over the world now. But, that's one example. I mean, like in this movie I liked, when the guy said, "Who can do karate better than Japanese?" And this white guy steps up. His name was Chuck Norris, one of my, and sweeps him, beats him up. But the whole point is that, have we in America lost our sense of understanding our founding and what power we, the people, have? I mean, in terms of governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. We are the self-governing people. So that's all I want to throw in there.
We're coming up on our 7:30 time. We have time for one more question, and then I'll close it and turn it over to our closing speaker, Mr. Stephen Smith. Mr. Hauser.
Okay, well, I'm not even sure there's a question because you've sort of answered my questions through the whole comments. Let me say I totally agree with everything that was said. Janice and I do a lot of outreach where we speak to people that we don't know if they're Republicans or Democrats or nothing or everything. And the idea of school choice, we don't attack teachers, we don't talk about test scores, we talk about how the money goes from the state controlling the money to the parents controlling the exact same amount of money. And I can say without exaggeration, 100% of the people we talk to say the same words. That sounds like a good idea. They all do. So that idea of the money, which is the power being put in the hands of the parents, is a totally appealing idea to everybody, and just whatever comments you may have on that specific.
Outstanding. And I have to tell you, I have field tested this in virtually every state I travel to. And you tell parents, if you could, I pull out my credit card and say, if you got a dedicated use debit card, anyone who's been in the military knows that when you travel, you get a type of dedicated use card. Similar concept. Pull out my credit card and say, your child actually gets at this state, this school, $14,000, $16,000. What if that money, you control that money? The eyes go big. Oh, well, that doesn't exist. Yeah, it does. 6 states. And where do you think, when we talk about not beating up on teachers and so forth, if parents are in charge of education dollars, do you think the superintendent or the 8th administrative superintendent for administrative streamlining is going to get $250,000 a year? Or do you think the money is going to go to teachers? Because what is most important to parents? It's my children's teachers. So not only do children win, families win, teachers and their families win under ESAs.
Wow. Thank you, Vicki. Any other final comments? We done? All right. Steve, are you ready to make your... I'm always ready. All right. Well, here, hang on. I want to thank Vicki Alger for coming here from Arizona. By the way, how's that Marine son of yours doing? Is he in infantry?
I'm not at liberty to say where he's stationed right now, but he's defending America. He's defending America.
Good.
But I would like to say one thing. As we get into these debates, let's not get siloed. I'm a homeschooling parent, a charter school parent, a religious school parent, this parent or that parent. If government or any one of the special interests comes after any parent, any one of us, they come after all of us. So this just isn't
That's
a
right.
California fight, an Arizona fight, a Kentucky fight. This is an American fight, and we need to stand together and work with each other to defend our liberty.
Very good. All right, I'd like to thank you, Vicki, and all of our panel members. What wonderful comments you had to make. You added greatly to what we have tonight. Steve Smith has been one of our chief spokesmen. He's going to take us out tonight. There are a few other people that I failed to mention. I think Marcy and Guillermo Guzman left. They've been with us. Is my long-suffering wife still here? Or is she with the grandkids? There she is in the back. God bless. Judy Binney with us for so many years. John Land, Juan Tierra, who calls in on the Government Grifter of the Week Award. Greg Britton, Eric Chan, our treasurer. I don't know if he's here, but thank you, Eric. And now I'd like to introduce you to one of my good friend for many years, fellow singer for many years, and a great spokesman for school choice. He's going to give our closing remarks at the conclusion. We'll stay here to answer any questions. He'll describe to you what the school choice plan is in detail. Steve, all yours.
Thank you so much, and I'm also a great lover of the Constitution. It's my favorite thing in the world. We have some luminaries and candidates here, and it's unfair to let the evening go by without mentioning them. We have Davina Kaiser. Is Davina, you're here? Please just stand up and tell us what you're running for. All right. There's a Mr. Lloyd White here, I believe. Lloyd, are you here? Did he leave? All right, then I would like to invite to the microphone for a couple of moments your next Congressman, Tim Donnelly.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you to everyone who put this on. This was really amazing and eye-opening, and I know many of you by your work. Haven't met all of you in person, but looking forward to it. You know, my mom would go to the school and she would tell them what her children were going to learn. And they learned that when she was coming to the school, and she was only 4'11", but she had 14 children, they would hide under the desks. They need to hide under the desks in shame, because we need to make our schools great again. So I'm running for Congress in the 8th District. Donnelly for Congress. I've got some handouts here if you want to come talk to me, but I am so excited to be here. I learned so much, and I am absolutely going to run on this winning issue of making the future awesome. God bless you and Godspeed.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Isn't that exciting? That's what we need, is our politicians and our candidates behind our cause. I've gone all over Southern California to various groups, and I've snuck in and grabbed 2 minutes here or 10 minutes there and talked about school choice. At all the events I've attended, they've talked about the terrible situation that our public school system is in, and frankly, the appalling curriculum that our students are being required to learn. We've skirted around the number one issue that's in people's hearts, and that's the sex education. I can't talk about it now, but I will tell you right now, if your next door neighbor came to your home and spoke to your 13-year-old daughter and about what's being taught today and went through the textbooks and showed her the pictures that they're using, he would be arrested and he would have to register as a sex offender. It's that serious. What I have not heard is the solution. And there is a solution, and the solution is being presented by our organization, California School Choice. The answer is very, very simple. Take the money away from the bureaucrats and the politicians and let the decisions of where your schools children attend be given to the parents. Simply saying it no longer follows the zip code, it follows the student. The idea is this simple. Currently, we have a budget of about $80 billion for public education K through 12 in the state of California. We simply take that amount of money and divide it by the number of students that are K through 12 in California. Currently, that comes to about $12,000 per year per student. There's other funds, it could even be significantly higher, but we're starting with that number. So now you can take your student out of their public school, and if you care to send them to a parochial school, a private school, a charter school, and you know what? If you like your public school, you can keep your public school. You can keep it. And you know something, for a change, we're telling the truth. We are telling the truth. Now, a question sometimes comes up, what about the homeschoolers? Because they're not a public school, right? What about the homeschoolers? Are you homeschool parents? Yes. Do you have any concern about how you're going to pay for college?
Yes. But my concern is how school choice will impact private schools who don't want the government dictating curriculum and taking away your freedom. That is my question that I would like. What would you have to say to private homeschoolers that are concerned about it? Yes.
Guess what? That's the same question every homeschooler asks, because they took their kids out of public schools because they no longer want governmental interference, and we're with them. But we got a really nice surprise for you. Boy, do we have a surprise for you. Suppose you have your kids, say first grade through 12th grade, and you're homeschooling. Remember, you start a little bit later. All that money, that $12,000 per year, accumulates. It accumulates, and it accumulates, and it accumulates. And when your child graduates, they could have $120,000 sitting there waiting for them to go to college or vocational school. If you enroll your child in a school where the tuition is less than that $12,000, and there's many parochial schools that are, that difference is still held for them until they graduate. So there is an answer. It's a great one. It comes later, but you can send your kid to Harvard if you wish. How about that one? It's that simple. Does that sound good to everybody? All right. So I want you to think back now to the time of our founding fathers, because everything that you've heard tonight tells you that we're in a great revolution, and that war has already begun. It's begun against the parents, it's gone against the children, and it's coming at us and directed toward us by, where's Rebecca? By who? Who's attacking us? The public school unions. Now, where did the battle truly begin back in those fine days? It did not begin on those sacred holy ground between Lexington and Concord. It began in rooms and places like this. People gathering over at the Hog's Head Tavern on the other side of the farm. People gathering in this place like this, and they were discussing the issues. And the difference is, they didn't just talk about it, they did something. And that onus is on every single one of you. If you believe in what we're talking about, if this hits you in the heart, the time for, what was the thing about being a sunshine patriot? The time's over. The time is over. We need your participation. Learn about what's going on. We have a new little newspaper over here. It's called The Voice of Choice. They're free. Take one, take many, give them to your friends. Learn about some of the issues. This one contains some of the articles from the people that you have heard tonight. And with that, I would like to know, is Jim Riley here? Is he in this room? Jim! Jim, he is our host. Let's hear it for Jim Riley.